Well, hello, and welcome to episode number 15 of the John DuLong Show. Hope you're having a great Monday morning so far. Maybe you're listening to this just as we came out. Maybe it's not even Monday for you. I pay vague attention to download numbers. I'm interested. I'm vain, basically. Notice that a lot of people either get this show either right on Monday or on Tuesday. So, glad that I'm starting your weeks out in a good way. I'm John DuLong. Thank you so much for joining me. A lot of great feedback on last week's episode. Certainly felt like we were back into the normal run of things. Actually got a couple of emails this week, both from a friend of the show, former guest, Mr. William Young. First one reads, "Hey John, quick note here as I'm listening to the episode. Enjoyed your guest interviews that you've had so far. They've been fun and engaging listens. Thanks, Will. Are there any plans to have any female interview subjects soon? I think you mentioned potentially having your better half on the show, but I'd like to hear from other women in your life as well. Sure this is on your mind too, so I'll just let you do your thing. Keep it up. Don't lose hope. Talk to you soon, Will Young." Well, okay, to be honest, definitely I noticed this myself, that I haven't had any female guests on. So far, it's just been, I've just been trying to get my friends in, and I've got some folks lined up, and I do have some women lined up that I'm going to ask to be on the show. A big thing for me is I don't want to impose on anybody. So I've just been mostly asking either really close friends or there goes my cell phone, or pals that I know who have things to promote. Speaking of which, just a couple of guests on the show that I want to shout out to their recent projects. Will Young, who wrote this email, his show Elwood City Limits, along with Lucas Mancini, is doing fantastically. I'm always enjoying listening to that. Listening to his most recent episode of the show, just sort of in between recording this episode. So really been enjoying that. Also, the most recent episode of Riding in Cars with Cats with Mike Tanner. One of my absolute favorites that he has released yet. It's called Big Fat Yoga Pants, and it's really, really great. It's sort of like all I needed to know about business I learned from yoga. And it's one of those shows that I absolutely love because it's a lot of really great motivational reminders, I guess. So that was for Will's first email. But what I'll say to that is I don't like imposing on anybody. Asking people to be on the show just sort of feels weird. I've just basically gone to some of my closest friends to start with. I'd certainly love to have more women. If there are suggestions that you have, and I'm saying this to Will, and I'm saying this to sort of the broader audience, email into the show, johndulangshow@gmail.com, or tweet me, get at me on Facebook, whatever. If you have somebody that you would love to hear me have a chat with, I'm all ears. Absolutely all ears on that. His second email to the show, was calling me out on something that I needed to be called out on, and I do want to address it. So here we go. He says, "Sorry for the double email, John, but as I listen to the new episode, I feel I must say something on a subject of Duke Nukem. I'm not a confrontational person, so I don't intend this to be in any way shaming you about something you're nostalgic for or trying to convince you that you're wrong for thinking or feeling a certain way. Duke Nukem 3D was a game that I played at a young age as well, and although I have fond memories of the gameplay and graphics and whatnot, I wanted to bring up the topic of the titular character and how he absolutely sucks. Duke Nukem is a relic of the 90s, as many things are, but in his case, he exists as a troublesome artifact of this depiction of the alpha male stereotype during that time in popular culture. Duke was very popular for a time in his day as the sunglasses wielding, movie quote stealing, big gun toting badass who killed aliens and saved the babes. Although it was deemed more acceptable at the time, the depiction of Duke as an uber-masculine, disaffected cool guy ages like fine milk. I love that statement. And that's to say nothing of that particular game's treatment of women. And it was pretty gross. For proof of this, look no further than Duke Nukem Forever, the belabored follow-up to 3D that came out in 2009, and in changing nothing about Duke as a character, revealed just how little there was to begin with. He goes on to say, like, he doesn't want to be the nostalgic police. I responded to Will in the moment, and I do want to sort of put this out there that I actually completely agree, and I completely share his discomfort with Duke Nukem 3D. I definitely have a different look at it today if I wasn't engaging it with like severely rose-tinted glasses. Like I bought Duke Nukem Forever like in the $10 bin at like EB Games or GameStop or whatever, and probably overpaid by about $12 for the game that I got. He's definitely a problematic character, and he's definitely a relic of a past time. I kind of look at it similar though to late 90s WWF. A lot of wrestling fans, if you're a wrestling fan listening to this, we have these great memories of these amazing moments with like The Rock and Austin, with Triple H, with DX, with all these characters and these amazing moments. And like, I mean, we just passed the Royal Rumble last week, and Royal Rumble 20 years ago, 1998, which was my favorite Royal Rumble match. It's just like this weird collection of these amazing like minor characters, along with some of the biggest names that the industry has ever created. But by the same token, its depiction of women is just like shallow, and bikini contests and like TNA, and it's awful. I hope that if the Cena movie happens, the Cena Duke Nukem movie happens, it'll deal with this like womanizing crap in an interesting way. I don't want them to just cut it out entirely, but I also don't want them to just be like, yeah, this is the way that it is. Like, I read about this movie that's supposedly coming out with like Tim Allen and like Adam Carolla and a bunch of people like taking on PC culture because that's a thing. So hopefully, like, the Cena movie deals with the womanizing bullshit in an interesting way. Like I said, I don't want them to necessarily cut it out entirely, but like I think that there are interesting ways that you can get around that. Like, I think you could kind of go one of two ways with it. You could kind of go with it being, satirizing that kind of alpha male nonsense in such a way that you kind of are mocking it in almost a like. The way that I put it to some people is like you could kind of do it as an Austin Powers type situation. Alternatively, you could go down the road of the most recent Bond movies. Like Daniel Craig's Bond is much different than in terms of his womanizing, in terms of his being a suave, better of women in kind of a gross way. He doesn't really do as much of that. It's certainly still a part of the character, but it's not just like, it's not just a constant hitting on Moneypenny and then going off and, sleeping with a Russian spy in order to, whatever. Bond movies age weird sometimes. Anyhow, Will also goes on to talk about how, first-person shooters have changed over the years. Honestly, the thing with first-person shooters is the things that I don't really care about is how I don't really find sort of the newer mechanics of the games all that interesting. And I'm not a huge fan of online play. I don't play games online a whole lot. So, like that's kind of why I think of Duke Nukem 3D as being such the pinnacle in my mind, is that like it's the last time I kind of really enjoyed. It was really simple mechanics and really simple gameplay, because you kind of want, like, I mean, setting aside sort of some of the gross womanizing aspects of Duke Nukem 3D, the gun-toting badass that just is killing aliens, that's just kind of fun. I enjoyed that, and again, its level of humor was perfect for me at that age. So, I'm not to say that I'm completely devoid of that kind of humor at all times. I'm not perfect, but I don't know. I should say that I'm cautiously looking forward to that movie. I'm going to see it, and if I have problems with it, I'm going to say it. Anywho, just to repeat, if you have somebody in your life, or if you are a woman in your own life, I guess, who you think should be on the John DuLong Show as a guest, let me know. JohnDuLongShow@gmail.com. And of course, you can always email in with any thoughts that you have about the show. As you can see, they'll get on here. Coming up after this little music break, I love this song so much. We're going to be talking about another movie that has been reported on that I'm definitely looking forward to. And, the character's a little bit less problematic than Duke Nukem. So here we go. So, caught the State of the Union address this week from President 45, and also the response speech from Joe Kennedy III. I thought he did really well, chapstick issues aside. Trump's speech wasn't anything that I wasn't expecting. Not thrilled about Gitmo being back, but it is what it is. There's nothing we can do about it. Trump controls everything right now, insofar as the Republican Party can be controlled. Honestly, like, sometimes this feels like dark times, Obviously, a lot of folks are really concerned about everything. I know that I've been watching a lot of The West Wing as just, liberal fantasy fulfillment. But this week I found out about this movie that's supposed to be coming out, that's being worked on as we speak. Production itself set to begin in September of this year, and I'm really looking forward to it. TriStar Pictures landed the worldwide distribution rights to a Mr. Rogers biopic. It's to be entitled "You Are My Friend," with Tom Hanks attached to play Mr. Rogers. So it's being directed by Mariel Heller, who also directed Diary of a Teenage Girl, and it's going to be a script by Micah Fitzgerman Blue and Noah Harpster. It's basically based on the real-life friendship between Mr. Rogers, Fred Rogers, and award-winning journalist Tom Junod. Basically, the story is that it's a cynical journalist who is sort of foisted upon to write an article about Mr. Rogers, profile piece, and ends up getting a lot of perspective on his life. So Heller attached to this. President of TriStar Pictures, Hannah Minghella, was quoted as saying, "This is the perfect alchemy of talent coming together at the perfect time to remind us all of the transformative power of kindness and respect to heal and unite." And I think that we need some more of that. I loved Mr. Rogers as a kid. Like a lot of those shows, I had a really eclectic set of shows that had a big impact on me as a kid. I posted on the Facebook page about this. Still is so funny to say, but a former actor